Hey friends, it's day 5 of Russian all-out war against Ukraine, and while we were waiting for the results of the negotiations currently going on in Belarus, I thought I'd record a video to answer some of the most asked questions about Ukraine, some of the misconceptions I'm seeing from the Westerners in social media, and one rather wild conspiracy theory that's unfortunately coming from American conservatives. I'm a conservative myself, so I'm flabbergasted this is happening. But anyway, so number one, I think it's the most confusing to the Westerners when they ask, if eastern parts of Ukraine want to be part of Russia, why do we care? If the Luhansk and Donetsk oblasts want to be seceded to Russia or connected or annexed to Russia, why should we spend any resources or send boots on the ground to protect that territory? Okay, so there's the simple answer and there's nuanced answer. The simple answer is that's a really wrong question to ask. Territories do not have opinions. It's the people who have opinions. And how many people have that opinion? How many people in Donetsk Luhansk region want to live in Russia? If they want to live in Russia, why they don't move to Russia? It's not a thing in the world, anywhere in the world, that if a city wants to be connected to another country, they vote for it and they become part of another sovereign state's territory. That's not a thing. So if there's some people who want to be there, how many of those people are there? How do we know that they want to be there? How do they know they want to be there? Okay, so that's a really simple answer. Nobody in Ukraine wants to be part of Russia. That's a very simple one. I thought, especially that most of you who are listening to this are Americans, I thought I'd give you an example that would illustrate the answer to this question better. Let's take Alaska. Alaska is actually a really good example because historically it's very close to what Crimea is and quite close to what the situation is in eastern parts of Ukraine. So let's take Alaska. There's a really small Russian population there that's called Starovery. I'm sure you've heard about them. These are the old believers, the Orthodox sect that has really some weird practices, but nevertheless, let's say they want Alaska to be Russian. And they go out and protest and say, we, Starovery, want Alaska to be Russian. And what do you say as Americans? You say, screw you guys. I mean, you're nothing but like 0.5% or even less of Alaska. We don't care what you think. If you want to go live in Russia, go swim across the channel and you'll be in Russia. Okay, fair enough. But let's say then Putin comes on to the American screens and says, well, we really have to right a historical wrong. Alaska is traditionally a Russian territory. It has been leased to the United States for 100 years, which has already expired, and it's time to get Alaska back to Russia. You say, well, screw you, Putin, as well. Nobody's giving anything back. And you guys know this nuance better than myself. All right. So, so nothing happens for a while. And then for 20 years after that, there is Russia is starting to broadcast through their channels, like Russia Today, tons of propaganda to the entire population of Alaska, with messaging like, "Look at America. It's been founded on slavery. It's historically oppressive to all the peoples around the world, starting with its conception in 1619, all through the Declaration of Independence, and now even to this time, that the only international interest of America is oil. Any wars that you're seeing going on with American troops are really for oil, and this shit flows into Alaska for 20 years straight. So now the number of people who are thinking poorly of America grows to, let's say, 5%. So now there's a little bit more people who want to be there. Then what Russia does is it starts to send in, lobby for Russians to go and live in Alaska for various reasons for about 20 years. And let's say by the end of 20 years, there is about 10% of Alaskan population, mostly who are Russians, some who are Americans who are turncoats and want Alaska to be Russian again. they go out and protest in the streets. Would you say that Alaska at this point wants to be part of Russia? Let's say then that all of a sudden there is military people in Alaska with no insignia, but with automatic weapons, who just start appearing on the streets of Anchorage. And all of a sudden, they say, we're going to hold a referendum. We're the force, we're the liberty force for Alaska. And we're going to take a vote. And everybody in the referendum is going to vote for either secession to Russia or staying in the United States. And nobody can stay home because these people are on the streets with automatic guns, and you have to go to the polls and vote. Everybody understands who these people are. Everybody understands how they want you to vote. And you don't have a chance not to go vote because there's a gun in your back. So this referendum, of course, turns out that most of the people in Alaska want to become part of Russia. And then, how would you answer a question? If Alaska wants to be part of Russia, why do we care? All right, so that's number one. Number two is a misconception that Ukrainian war is a regional conflict. I talked about this a lot in detail in my previous videos. So please check those out if you're interested in this topic or you're confused by this misconception. But one thing that we have to understand here is that it's not that Russian ambition is outward and they want to get more and more territory. It's more that Russian identity, their own identity, is opposing the West. So as you know, every country has sort of their own folklore, their own reason for being, raison d'être, right? And we all have these narratives that we live in. For example, in America, the narrative is we are the leaders of the free world. In Russia, the narrative is that we are preserving the world from Western decadence, from Western culture. We are the Orthodox nation preventing the world from falling into godlessness. So what you have to understand is that Russia, it's not just a practical consideration for them to try to get Ukrainian territory, to try to make war with Russia. It's their holy mission, which changes the game entirely. At the beginning, before the beginning of Ukrainian war, which was on Sunday in Putin's speech, he talked about Ukraine tactically, but strategically he was against the West. Listen to it. I mean, it's blood boiling what he's saying, but it's really enlightening to hear what he says. When he was talking about the nuclear arsenal and the high alert for those weapons, he was talking against the West. This is not a regional conflict. This is the war against the West. It's because it's Russian identity to oppose the West in everything they do and have. All right. So the next two ones are a part of this wild conspiracy theory. Started with a video of Tulsi Gabbard, who was saying that this is something that mass media is not going to tell you, but Ukraine is not a democracy for two reasons. Current president imprisoned the guy who was number two, who came in number two at the last elections, and then he shut down 3 TV stations who were criticizing him. Well, Tulsi, the reason mass media is not going to tell you this because this is utter bullshit. In fact, the guy who came in second in the last election, Petro Poroshenko, he was our president for the past 4 years. He is now a leader of a defense battalion in Kyiv. He's on TV practically every day. Him and the current president are supporting each other, and they're defending Kyiv and Ukraine together. I'm seeing this video and these conspiracy theories being promoted by prominent conservative channels. This kind of crap makes my blood boil. This This is utter lies. Okay, here's what is true. It's obvious that Ukrainian politicians are corrupt. There's a lot of corrupt politicians in Ukraine. It's obvious that there is some corrupt schemes, money laundering that's going on between the United States and Ukraine. That's I agree that that's happening. But to say that Ukraine is not a democracy, to spread lies about President Zelensky, who was imprisoned anybody, he hasn't imprisoned anybody. There's no past Ukrainian president who's in prison right now. I'll tell you more about democracy, Tulsi, and everybody who reposts her. Since 1991, all the elections in Ukraine were transparent and not contested. In 2004, in 2014, when we suspected that there was something going on, that president fled Ukraine. He's not he's hiding in Russia. You know by now, by these 4 days, the Ukrainians are not the people who are going to be silent or just lay down and take it if there's injustice going on. We're not that kind of people. So tell me, where is democracy stronger? In the United States, where the last election was first claimed to be fraudulent before the election, and then by one side, and then claimed to be fraudulent, stolen election by the other side, or Ukraine, where authority was passed peacefully. Ukraine right now is a stronger democracy than the United States. So don't tell me Ukraine is not a democracy. I did not vote for Zelensky. In fact, he got about 72 to 73% of the vote. I didn't vote for him. I was really upset. But there's no doubt in my mind, there's no doubt in Ukrainians' minds, there's no doubt in the international community's mind that the elections were fair, because the Ukrainians would have poured out in the streets if there was fraud. So stop spreading this bullshit, please. Ukraine is a democracy. Our elections are fair and transparent. There's nobody who can cite any facts to oppose that. Okay. Number 2. This is like number 4. The same conspiracy theory claims that Ukrainian revolution was staged by CIA back in 2014 because it was trying to protect the U.S. politicians' interests in money laundering and some oil deals. Well, just to say that, what's the evidence? I've seen the evidence you post. A lot of that is like proven fakes. 2014 was not about America. Not everything is about you. Okay? The world does not stop existing when you turn off the lights for the night in the United States. Both things can be true at the same time. On the one hand, it is true that Ukraine has some serious corruption problems, and the US has some serious corruption problems. At the same time, it's true that Mr. Putin is a warmonger who will take any opportunity to grab territory because of his holy war. Ukrainians are not some people without a will who will take anything that comes to them. We know what we want. We want to live in a free country. And we wanted to define what our culture and our country will look like. I was an active part in the 2013-2014 revolution in Ukraine. Nobody was manipulated there. The president that we had was a marionette for Putin, was very clear. And after that, he had imposed the tyrannical laws, which regulated our access to the internet, which had curfew, which prohibited protests. We took that fucker out. So this is not a CIA operation. This is utterly arrogant to say what you're saying. I know that you conservatives, and I'm a conservative myself, I know you're accusing the other side of having the white savior complex. You have the American savior complex. Not the world doesn't revolve around you. Okay. That last one was kind of brutal. Guys, I thank you for your support. I think it's really encouraging and heartening to hear your support and that you're with us. And in the last 2 days, there have been such a great outpouring of prayers, thoughts, encouragement, but also some real hard stuff like sanctions. Russia today, the central bank doesn't want to open the markets because they're afraid the ruble is going to plummet. It's in free fall right now. I think a week ago it was like 80 rubles for dollar. Right now it's like in speculative markets it's being sold at like 190 or something like that. So the sanctions have hit Russia a lot harder and a lot faster than I thought. And that's why we're seeing some unstable behavior from Putin. Okay, feel free to ask your questions. I want to be able to ask you questions. I got mad at Tulsi Gabbard and those people who spread this kind of bullshit. But I welcome questions. I'd be happy to answer any, either questions or misconceptions or something you're confused about. I feel like a little bit like my role here is to represent Ukraine to the West or to a little portion of the West. So if I can be of help, please don't hesitate to ask your questions either in the comments or if you know me personally, message me in one of the messengers. All right, I'll be on later to see what's happening on day 5.